Thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Under strange and unexplainable circumstances. Most cases remain unsolved. What happened? Where did they go? Locations unknown.
Thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Join us as we dive into the deep end of the unexplainable and try to piece together what happened. You are listening to Locations Unknown.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Locations Unknown. I'm your co-host, Joe Erato, and with me, as always, is a man who was the first person to break 2 world records, which makes him the first person to break 3 world records, which makes him the first person to break 4 world records, and so on, Mike Van de Bogert.
Oh, thank you, Joe.
That's all technically true.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. I didn't even know that. Well, thank you to all of our...
Now, hold on. Think about it. If you're the first person to break 2 world records...
Yeah.
Well, then you're the first person to break 2 world records, which gives you a world record, which makes you the first person to break 3 world records.
There you go.
And it just keeps
into infinity.
Yeah, you're the first infinity world record holder.
Wow.
So we should find out who that is.
Okay. Well, we'll get right on that.
We'll find that person and interview him on the live stream.
Yes, there we go.
Or her.
Well, thank you for tuning in to Locations Unknown. I apologize for my voice. I'm fighting a little cold tonight, but we're dedicated to the podcast, so
no one was gonna notice it until you just pointed it out.
Well, we're like the post office, rain or shine, we're here. And I'm getting Joe sick.
That's all right.
So, but I'd also like to thank a new Patreon shout out, Nick Speaker. So thank you so much for supporting the show.
Thank you, Nick.
If you'd like to call the show, you can call 208-391-6913. Leave some spicy voicemails or texts. We got a very interesting text that...
Spicy ones?
Spicy ones.
Just only spicy ones.
Yes.
We're going to go through all of them on our live show, so just start reining them in. We're not going to do them until then, but...
We got a really interesting text with pictures. Apparently, the grandson of Glenn Hyde from our episode a few weeks ago texted us.
Oh.
It was talking about his dad or grandfather.
Really?
Yeah.
And did he say like we could share what he was saying, or?
I'll talk to you after the show.
Okay. All right. Well, cool.
But yeah, so that's pretty cool. If you want to listen to some of the other shows on our network, you can check out Peanut Butter and Mountain Podcast, Off the Trails, The Weirdos We Know, Who Runs This Park, and Crime Off the Grid. More to come soon. You can also support the show through Patreon, YouTube memberships, premium subscriptions on Apple, subscriptions on Spreaker, someday on X. Other than that, we've got a big live stream coming up on April 23rd, so mark your calendars.
Yep, that's going to be a fun one.
Joe and I still have to get some logistics figured out for that, but
it's happening.
Way or the other, we will be live.
And Andy's supposed to be there, although I think he's going to be a new father soon, so we'll see.
Cancel it. He's coming.
This is way more important than
yes. That. No, that's exciting. Yes. So if he's here or not here, he'll be here in spirit. Just know that he's having a child.
Yeah.
So other than that, I do not have any other updates.
All right, everybody, let's gear up and get out to explore Locations Unknown. November 20th, 2010. As darkness swallowed Lake Placid, a 22-year-old hiker set off into the High Peaks wilderness after his shift at the downtown diner. Several hiking parties spotted him in a green Carhartt jacket, vanishing into the trees 2 miles in. Days later, that jacket was found. He was not. Join us this week as we unravel the disappearance of Wesley Wamsganz.
So the thing I keep thinking of when I hear this person's name is from Anchorman.
Mm-hmm.
Whammy.
No,
Champ.
Champ. Whammy.
I don't know why. I haven't seen that movie in forever.
I feel like there's a Wamsganz is the name of a character in another movie, and it's gonna come to me.
Wamsganz.
Yeah, but like Bob Wamsganz or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's a movie.
It's a very unique name, so that would be very interesting if
yes,
that was in a movie.
But this story is bringing us to the High Peaks Wilderness area of the Adirondacks, Avalanche Lake Pass or Lake Colden area. It is in New York State. It was established in 1972. The official designation as a wilderness area was in 1972. It sees around 100,000 visitors per year. So some interesting facts. 2 of the most popular mountains, Mount Joe and Mount Van Hoevenberg, were named after a pair of lovers who met and fell in love while camping in the mountains in 1877. Henry Van Hoevenberg would go on to establish the Adirondack Lodge, which would burn down in 1903 and be rebuilt.
Isn't that amazing? Back then, you could go camping and you could still get like mountains named after you.
Yeah, and like build a thing
Yeah.
and stay there and not be ticketed. There are 46 mountains. 42 of them are over 4,000 feet high. Hikers who have hiked all 46 peaks are referred to as the Adirondack 46ers.
Kind of cool, but I mean, only
you're
4,000 feet.
You're going to get some haters.
Yeah,
Oh, it's so easy.
I'm not saying it's easy. That's a lot of hiking, but
It's a lot of hiking, but 4,000 feet. Now, are you starting at, I know you're not at sea level,
yeah.
but what's the grade? See, you can't say anything yet.
All right,
until
fine.
You got to know.
I take back my.
In 1901, Theodore Roosevelt was hiking the Adirondacks mountains when he found out President William McKinley's health was turning for the worse due to a gunshot wound. At age 42, Roosevelt would become the youngest president in U.S. history while waiting at a train station after descending the mountains.
That's pretty cool.
That is cool. Not that the other
Not that the other guy was shot, but he's just like, I'm in a train. All right, well, you're president now.
Congrats. The original Adirondack Lodge was rebuilt in 1927 and renamed the Adirondack Lodge due to Lake Placid Club president Melville Dewey's fascination with phonetic spelling.
And it's spelled L-O-J.
L-O-J.
Yeah.
He's like me, he just couldn't spell. So he's like, I'm fascinated with phonetic spelling. Just to cover up that he can't spell words. All unnecessary vowels and consonants were removed for ease of pronunciation.
Air quotes.
He was just dumb.
Yeah.
But a grifter. I don't want to disparage him. That's a joke for legal reasons. But our friends at the Köppen Climate Classification System designate this area as a humid continental climate, cold, snowy winters, and warm, humid summers with year-round precipitation. There's extreme variability, so there are large seasonal temperature swings with subarctic conditions at higher elevations. This White Claw is really getting to me. Microclimates, high peaks have tundra-like conditions, while valleys and lakeshores are milder. So a little bit about the terrain. The area is dominated by high rugged peaks with many summits exceeding 4,000 feet. Mount Marcy, the highest peak in New York, towers over the landscape at 5,300 feet. These mountains display steep ridgelines, jagged outcrops, and boulder fields formed by ancient anathracite bedrock and further sculpted by glacial erosion and landslides. Above a certain elevation, the forests give way to a fragile alpine tundra. The high elevation zone is marked by sparse vegetation, low growing alpine meadows, and rocky surfaces where only hardy plants, remnants of once more extensive tundra, manage to cling to life. These areas are extremely sensitive to human impact. The terrain bears clear signs of glacial past with cricks, kettle ponds, and glacial erratics scattered throughout the landscape. Numerous clear, cold streams cascade from the slopes, forming waterfalls and merging into alpine lakes such as Lake Tyr of the Clouds and the reputed source of the Hudson River. Here's a little bit about the animals in the area. There are black bears, coyotes, moose, bobcats, bald eagles, painted and snapping turtles. One of the things you want to look out for is exposure. There are harsh winds topping 70 miles per hour shortly after disappearance, and temperatures increasingly reaching 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So when he went missing, there were some pretty strong winds going.
Yeah.
Typically, November in the Adirondacks brings cold temperatures. Daytime highs often range from 30s to 40s, while nighttime lows can drop well below freezing. Snow and ice at higher elevations likely had accumulation, increasing the risk of hypothermia and making trails slippery. Shorter daylight hours with the sun setting earlier, hikers face limited daylight, increasing the risk of getting caught in the dark. And again, the wind and precipitation. So rain, sleet, and snow are possible, along with strong winds at higher elevations, which could lead to rapid temperature drops and dangerous wind chills. Hikers and adventurers must be prepared for steep, rocky climbs and sudden changes in weather, as the open summits can be subject to harsh winds and rapid temperature drops, even when the lower elevations remain relatively mild. So some tips for hiking safely. You want to always plan ahead and check the conditions. This is kind of an always thing, even if it seems like a nice day.
Yeah.
Before you set out, review the current weather forecast and trail conditions. You can use that one app that starts with an A and ends with Trails, because they won't sponsor us, so I don't want to. And we'll be competing with them soon.
Yes.
Mike's building some crazy stuff, and if you're a patron, you'll know about it, so sign up.
Crazy.
The weather in the high peaks can change suddenly, so plan your trip with extra time in case you need to turn back. The essential gear you'd want: layered clothing, including waterproof and windproof outerwear. Get a good shell, a reliable map and compass or GPS device, a headlamp. It's important to have some extra food and water and a first aid kit. You're going to want to use bear-resistant containers if you're staying overnight. So food, toiletries, and trash should be secured in the bear canister. Basically anything that smells, you want to put in there. It's not just for the wildlife protection. It also helps prevent attracting animals to your campsite. Travel with a group if you can and inform others where you'll be. Stay on marked trails only. As we said, your impact can really ruin the landscape. So be prepared for emergencies. And once again, respect leave no trace principles. So Mike, tell us a little bit about Mr. Wamsganz.
Yeah, so the name of this case is Wesley Wamsganz. He was born August 13th of 1988. He went missing on November 20th of 2010. His remains have not been found. He was a male, age 22. He'd be 36 as of right now. He was 6'3", 180 pounds. He had strawberry blonde hair, blue eyes. Clothing gear last seen in. So one of the themes of this disappearance is you'll realize he really had no gear with him when he went out there. So very unprepared for the conditions he would have faced. So he had a Carhartt jacket.
Oh, it hit me. It's Succession, the TV show Succession.
Oh.
Tom Wamsganz is one of the characters of the show.
I remember that.
Yeah, that's Tom, the tall guy, like the son-in-law that's just a
kind
goof.
Of dorky.
Yeah, ends up being like the CEO.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, that's where I'm remembering the name. All right, sorry, go on.
No,
it just hit me.
He had a black Bob Marley hooded sweatshirt, cotton pants, hiking shoes, and a red, yellow, and green striped beanie cap. Personality-wise, he was well-loved, considered the coolest kid by coworkers. His cousin Amber says always energetic, always outgoing. He had been acting weird lately, stated by his sister, Sienna. Occupation, he was a dishwasher, prep cook at the downtown diner in Lake Placid. Experience in the wilderness, he did have some experiences suggested by his older sister and best friend, Curtis. He always went into the woods prepared and told someone where he was going. Usually hikes Mount Baker or somewhere else near their home in Saranac Lake. So, and he said sometimes he would just go into the forest to seek solitude. So it sounds kind of like that's what he was doing this time. But he was a Boy Scout, went through the School of Urban Wilderness and Survival. A 3-week desert course where group a group of 8 peers are given a small ration of food and equipment for survival training in high school. That sounds pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, that puts him up higher on a list of being prepared, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, just
understanding the basics.
Yeah, and experience in this location. He had been here several times for skiing, hiking, and mountain biking, so pretty familiar with the location. Sorry, just rehydrating there.
You're all good. It's okay.
All right, so getting into the timeline, I wanted to do something different here. Before I got into the timeline, I kind of wanted to go over a high-level summary of the estimated route that Wesley would have taken. So just because you're going to hear a lot of different intersections and trails, and this might help to just make it a little more coherent for people listening. So Wesley began his hike at the Adirondack Lodge, L-O-J, trailhead near Heart Lake, heading into the High Peaks Wilderness.
I feel like you still say it Lodge. It's just spelt wrong.
Lodge?
Yeah, because he wanted it phonetic.
I guess, yeah, Lodge.
So,
I said it wrong.
Yeah.
I said Lodge for some reason. I don't know why. Probably because he didn't spell it right.
Yeah, because he's just phonetic spelling. It's L-O-J, but it's supposed to be Lodge.
So his initial route he likely followed was the main trail from the Lodge to Marcy Dam, roughly 2 miles along the popular Van Hovenberg Trail. Guy even has a trail named after himself, too. So his last confirmed sighting was near Marcy Dam, a backcountry crossing about 2 miles in from the trailhead. From Marcy Dam, the route continues southwest on the Avalanche Pass Trail, marked with yellow blazes, towards Avalanche Lake and Lake Colden. It's likely that Wesley proceeded onto the trail after leaving Marcy Dam. Wesley was last traveling on the Avalanche Pass Trail beyond Marcy Dam, likely in the vicinity of Avalanche Pass or Lake Colden, like I said. So jumping right into the timeline, it's November 20th of 2010. It's the morning. So Wesley was working the day shift at the downtown diner in Lake Placid. Co-workers later noted he was not acting himself that day. One friend described him as super spiritual in his demeanor. So this unusual behavior was seen by coworkers hours before he left work. So Wesley didn't mention carrying any hiking gear or big pack that day. He reportedly told the last person he spoke with that he planned to hike to the Adirondack Lodge area, a popular trailhead in the High Peaks, after work. And like I said, he had no supplies, no winter clothing, no backpack, just the clothes on his back. So not what I would call prepared for hiking in that part of the country in November. So it's same day, so November 20th, 2010. It's now early afternoon, so this is when Wesley left work. He was last seen in the village of Lake Placid around 2 p.m., leaving the downtown diner. He departed on foot, heading out of town. Witnesses saw him walking along Sentinel Road, which leads towards the Adirondack Lodge, trailhead south of Lake Placid. Am I saying that right?
Adirondack.
Adirondack.
You usually call him like Adrian.
Adirondack. So I will get that right.
No, you won't.
No, I won't. As he left, Wesley was wearing only casual attire for the hike, and we went over this in the character profile, but yeah, he had the Carhartt jacket and the sweatshirt, cotton pants, and some hiking shoes or boots, and a brimmed beanie cap with red, yellow, and green stripes. Police received information that Wesley likely reached the Adirondack Lodge area that afternoon. Witnesses possibly spotted him at the lodge parking lot on Saturday, though this sighting was not 100% confirmed. He apparently started down the lodge trail towards Mount Marcy and Avalanche Pass sometime in the afternoon on his own. And unfortunately, he did not sign in at any of the trail registers, and no record was found suggesting he headed straight in. It's now about November 20th of 2010, 5 p.m. This would be the last known sighting of him. So several hikers later reported seeing him on the trail as darkness fell. The last confirmed sighting was near Marcy Dam, about 2 miles in from the Adirondack Lodge trailhead, early Saturday evening. One source even noted he was seen farther along near Avalanche Pass that evening, but most reports pinpoint him around the Marcy Dam area. So, like we said, this area is deep in the High Peaks wilderness, and after these evening sightings, Wesley disappeared and was never seen again. He obviously, like we said, he was hiking alone. He was not equipped for overnight survival, and the temps that night were below freezing, so harsh conditions to not be prepared for. So November 21st of 2010, so when Wesley failed to return or make contact, his family reported him missing to the local authorities. So Lake Placid and the police began initial inquiries that day. Forest rangers were alerted that a hiker was overdue in the High Peaks. And like we said, that night, temperatures in the mountains plummeted into the teens, and snow and sleet began moving into the region, raising the urgency. So very dire situation if you were stuck out in that wilderness in those conditions. So we're talking like 15-degree Fahrenheit weather, snow and sleet, no survival gear. So, and he's in, cotton pants.
Yeah.
You would get very cold and wet very quickly. So it is now November 22nd of 2010. So the New York Department of Environmental Conservation, or DEC, forest rangers performed preliminary searches on Monday. They checked local parking areas, trailheads, roadways for any signs of Wesley or his car, though he hadn't driven. Trail registers and entry points around the lodge and other nearby trails, including the Northville Placid Trail terminus, were reviewed. Rangers did not find any initial clues or sightings that day. So, and then even worse, by Monday night, light snow was falling in the High Peaks area, which would obscure any possible tracks he might have left. And for those of you just listening, Joe has the trail on the screen right now. And
Yeah, it's a whole loop that says you can
are you
get
sharing it?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Actually, yes. It says you can get 15 of the, what is it, 64 peaks or something?
43.
Whatever. Yeah, whatever it was, you can get 15 of those peaks just on this loop.
This is a pretty wild trail.
It got 11,000 feet of elevation gain. They say it takes almost 21 hours to complete. So it's no joke. It's
Some
a
of these,
lot of,
look at that stretch right there. You're like,
yeah.
Look at the switchbacks there.
Yeah, it's 29 miles, 11,000 feet elevation gain total by the end of it.
And
going
you're
up
up in the summits of each mountain pretty much the whole time, or a good chunk of it.
You're just taking saddles from summit to summit, especially this whole stretch right here.
Wow.
I bet it's beautiful. I'm going to go to pictures after this, but
That's cool.
This would be a really cool loop to do over the course 3 or 4 days, not to go too crazy with
yourself.
it. Yeah, I'm sure speed runners and trail runners and stuff could do it all in 20 some hours, but this would be a really cool one to just camp and do over 3 or 4 days just to take it easy.
Yeah. No, that's
we
cool.
might have to look into doing this in the summer. That'd be a fun one.
That would be fun. So it is now November 23rd of 2010. So search efforts are now intensifying on this day. So a unified command post was established at the Lodge trailhead area as multiple agencies joined the search. DEC, Forest Rangers, New York State Police Troopers, and the State Police Special Operations Response Team, otherwise known as SORT, assembled to comb...
Why'd you say it like that?
Because it's just
SORT.
It's just a funny acronym. So who do you work for? I work for SORT.
Just say SORT, and then I won't have to laugh.
So they were assembled to comb the wilderness south of the Lodge area.
That guy.
So they did have canine units deployed on the ground as well, By Tuesday morning, roughly 40 to 60 personnel were involved in the search, including, like I said, forest rangers and police. Based on the last known location, teams concentrated on trails between Marcy Dam and Lake Colden, which includes the Avalanche Pass area. Rangers and officers fanned out along the Van Hovenberg Trail, Avalanche Pass Trail, and around Marcy Dam, effectively covering the likely route Wesley would have taken deeper into the high peaks. So
I'm just looking at some of these pictures of the snow, and it accumulates. Holy cow.
yeah,
There's like several feet of snow in a lot of these pictures. It looks beautiful.
yeah, it looks really
Absolutely.
probably some good skiing.
Yeah, just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah, if
like
you like snowshoed and had some cross-country skis, this could be a really fun winter camp.
yeah. No, it looks really cool. There's so many places, you can go hiking. It's always it's mind-boggling. We cover a case of, you talk a lot about the big parks, the national parks,
Yeah.
but there's so many locations, national forests,
Well,
wilderness areas.
if you really think about it, I mean, like, they're just areas of the wilderness they just designated and, like,
Yeah.
added amenities. But, like, there's so many hidden gems everywhere.
I mean, when we used to do our really big trips every year, we never even considered some of the national forests out west.
Oh, yeah.
They have some better hiking than the parks, and they're a lot less crowded.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, this one only sees 100,000 a year.
That's really cool. So it's now very late on November 22nd or possibly November 23rd, but this is when searchers found a critical clue on the trail. Excuse me. So Wesley's green Carhartt jacket was discovered lying in the middle of the trail heading toward Avalanche Pass. And officials initially declined to publicly specify the item, simply stating some evidence was found indicating he had been in the area. But eventually, the jacket was confirmed to belong to Wesley and suggested he had removed it while hiking, despite the cold. This find shifted searchers' attention. They now know Wesley made it at least a few miles in from the trailhead, and teams began an intensive sweep radiating out from the jacket's location. Ground teams conducted grid searches and line searches in the vicinity of Avalanche Pass, Avalanche Lake, and around Marcy Dam. And this is a technique we've seen in a lot of more modern search and rescues. It's very effective for finding any kind of gear someone might drop. So they looked for any additional belongings, such as a hat or other clothing, and signs of a person leaving the trail. State police canines attempted to track a scent from the jacket deeper into the woods. However, by Tuesday, the weather was deteriorating further with snow and sleet, potentially destroying tracks. And unfortunately, no other items were found on Tuesday aside from the jacket. And with all that weather in there, it would be really hard for dogs to pick up on a scent at that point.
Yeah, there's 17,000 pictures, so I'm not going to get through all of them.
Yeah.
But I'm getting through a ton of them, and everybody that's here when it's snowing has, at a minimum, skis and snowshoes and a bunch of gear on.
Yeah.
And there's been several signs saying, like, do not proceed in this area unless you have the proper gear. So it's a pretty remote, treacherous area, it would appear.
Yeah.
And it's not heavily visited, as you said.
Yeah.
So if you don't have the right stuff, it's going to be
tough.
It's going to be extremely tough. Even in the pictures where it's like springtime, it's like super thick because you don't have a lot of people going through it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunity to get lost or have error or have problems happen.
Yeah. So it is now November 24th of 2010. So the search and rescue operation is still growing in scale now, and it's midweek. So beginning Wednesday, the DEC brought in additional forest rangers and over 24 volunteer searchers from the New York State Search and Rescue Organization. In total, nearly 60 people were actively searching on Wednesday. State police in Raybrook sent 2 more K-9 units to bolster the effort. Search teams were organized into crews to cover specific grid segments in the search. Authorities implemented a Type 3 grid search, a systematic sweep of the area by searchers spaced at intervals centered on the spot where Wesley's jacket was found. This meant thoroughly checking drainages, thickets, and terrain features in case he succumbed to hypothermia or sought shelter nearby. The grid search between Avalanche Pass and Marcy Dam continued throughout Wednesday. A state police helicopter, just lost my spot. A state police helicopter was deployed to overfly the high peaks. Unfortunately, high winds and poor flying conditions in the mountains forced the helicopter to turn back and abandon the mission on Wednesday. So rangers planned to try again when the weather allowed. The bad weather not only hampered air searches, but also made ground searching treacherous. So, you're talking wind chill and risk of blowdown. So, search dogs also were used to try to pick up Wesley's trail again. However, the usefulness was limited by several factors, including days of snow and rain, which most likely had washed away any scent that might have still been out there. And many search personnel and hikers had been in the area, complicating the scent trail. So handlers directed canines into more remote or off-trail areas in the hopes of detecting human scent where people normally wouldn't be, but they didn't have any luck. And throughout all of this, conditions in the high peaks were deteriorating by the hour, and we're now winter-like. Temperatures dropped down to 10 degrees Fahrenheit Wednesday night, with snow, sleet, and freezing rain over the preceding days. So just terrible conditions to be hiking in, let alone, conducting a search and rescue operation.
Yeah, and again, he doesn't have any of the proper gear for this type of scenario.
No, just, a couple minutes of sleet would have soaked him.
Yeah.
And then it's done in those conditions, sadly.
I keep trying to hold myself from talking about theories, so I'll keep waiting.
Okay. So it's now November 25th, 2010. This would be Thanksgiving. So this is why I love search and rescue people in general. They went out on their Thanksgiving and continued searching, not only, risking their lives on a holiday when they could be, in the comfort of their own homes, eating food and watching football, but also the weather conditions.
Yeah.
We're talking, extremely cold weather, bad wind chills, heavy snow, and they're all out there still searching for this guy, someone they've never even met. It's
and you can't even, this is how thick it is, you can't even see this trail on the map.
Yeah.
When you zoom in, you'll see how
wow.
Like it is a trail, but
that's thick.
It's very thick.
So I just want to once again give, props to anyone listening who is involved with search and rescue and just the dedication those crews have.
Yes.
They even go out on holidays in really bad weather to help find someone they've never even met. So can't thank them enough for doing that. But so search crews did not relent despite the holiday, like I said. Forest rangers, state police, and volunteers spent Thanksgiving in the field searching for Wesley. The search command made use of the slight break in the weather on Thursday. Conditions improved enough to get the helicopter back in the air. With calmer winds, the state police helicopter conducted aerial searches on Thursday. So the crew overflew the Marcy Dam to Lake Colden corridor, scanning open areas, lakes, and drainages for any sign, such as tracks or a body against the snow. Unfortunately, nothing definitive was spotted from the air. Ground search teams continued their grid searches and expanded into adjacent areas on Thanksgiving. They searched along the Algonquin Peak Trail, Lake Colden shoreline, and Indian Pass areas as needed, covering all possible routes out of the Avalanche Pass vicinity. Searchers were now on their fifth day of efforts in these terrible conditions, which was obviously both physically and emotionally taxing. Many local volunteers who were off work for the holiday offered to help. Officials obviously welcomed the extra volunteers, but asked that they coordinate through DEC's search command before entering the woods. The infusion of volunteers helped cover more ground. By the end of Thanksgiving Day, no new evidence was found. Crews had now covered most trails and drainages in the eastern high peaks near where Wesley was last seen. And like I said, the only items recovered remained the green jacket, and later on it was revealed a belt was also found. We'll talk about that below. So obviously Wesley had not been located. November 26th, 2010. So the search is now entering its 6th full day. Dozens of searchers were still engaged. By this point, search operations had covered approximately 8 to 10 square miles in and around the trail system, around the lodge to Avalanche Lake.
It just seems like such a hard area to search.
Oh, yeah.
Especially with the weather.
Yeah. You got the weather, you've got the
gosh.
terrain, you've got the thick vegetation. Even though it's November, a lot of the leaves are probably down. It's still thick.
People are so good.
I know.
Like, none of them have to do that.
No, they don't get paid
Like,
to
a
do
lot
it.
a lot of them don't have to do that.
And they're risking their
that's-
lives. They could easily
yeah.
get lost or die out there too.
Yeah, but they want to, which is cool.
I know.
That's good. That's awesome.
So like I said, they've covered 8 to 10 square miles in rough terrain, rough conditions.
Yeah.
They covered all the high probability areas, trails, waters, known campsites, ravines, and they went over these areas multiple times. So Friday's weather improved a little bit. It remained cold, but was clear, which helped with visibility. Crews took advantage of daylight to revisit difficult spots such as thick spruce areas or blowdown zones that might have been overlooked. The helicopter was also resurveyed areas from overhead, and K9 units were cycled through various search grids again. With the weekend approaching, authorities reiterated calls for anyone with information on Wesley's whereabouts to come forward. They also coordinated a larger volunteer turnout for the weekend. Hikers familiar with the high peaks were encouraged to help on Saturday and Sunday under ranger guidance. Family and friends also joined in on the search and waited at command post for news. So a lot of people still out there, almost a week into the search.
Jordan McCall took some amazing photos, by the way. So, Jordan, if you're listening and you're an All Trails user, great pictures.
Props to you.
Great pictures.
So as of Friday evening, the massive search still hadn't found Wesley. Rescuers had now endured about a week of sub-freezing nights, searching just rugged terrain. Morale was challenging, but teams were determined to continue into the weekend while there was still any signs of hope in finding him alive. So it's now the weekend. It's November 27th to November 28th. After 8 days of exhaustive searches, the formal search operation began to scale down. Some search activity continued into Saturday, with fresh volunteer teams checking lower probability zones and rechecking certain areas with refined strategies. By this time, however, no new evidence had emerged beyond the jacket and now belt already found. And sadly, the likelihood of a survival outcome had sadly diminished given the frigid conditions, no gear, no shelter. So by Sunday, November 28th, DEC and state police made the decision to transition the case to a limited continuous search status. This meant that the large-scale ground search was suspended, but forest rangers would continue to patrol the area and follow up on any fresh leads or sightings that might arise. So, in other words, search efforts didn't completely cease, but they were greatly reduced. And a lot of times, search and rescue teams will do training in areas where people have gone missing, just because they obviously, for one, need to train, year-round. And two, they might stumble across something during their training, and why not do it in an area where someone went missing?
Yeah.
So the official search spanned 8 days, and I would say one of the more brutal search and rescue operations we've covered, just as far as terrain and weather. It just sounded like a brutal, miserable time out there. Something you would never do if you were just hiking.
Yeah.
But like we said, these people are dedicated to, finding missing people. So They're going to go out there no matter what. And in a case like this, I mean, you got to find this person in the first 24 hours, I think, if you really want to find them alive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe even less than that, like 12 hours based on the gear he had. I mean, if one of us went missing with, our 40 pounds of gear that we normally carry, we might be able to make it a night. But
If I had all the gear, I could make it a couple weeks. I bring way too much stuff.
yeah, right. So at its peak, like I said, the search had around 60 people, forest rangers, state troopers, park police, SAR volunteers, and others. Searchers covered eastern High Peaks wilderness thoroughly, including all trails, drainages, peaks between the Lodge, Marcy Dam, Avalanche Pass, Avalanche Lake, and Lake Holden. They employed foot teams, canine units, air support, and grid search techniques. Despite all of these efforts, only the coat and belt were found. And like I said, November 28th, the active search was scaled back. So some of the challenges this search faced, I figured I would sum up, because this is one of the more gnarly search and rescue operations I've read about on a search for a missing person. So the weather, for one, the weather was just brutal. So harsh winter-like weather hit the High Peaks in the days immediately after Wesley's disappearance. Temperatures dropped into the single digits at night, and the area was hit with snow, sleet, and freezing rain, so all of the stuff you don't want while you're searching. These conditions posed many problems. They endangered the subject, so biggest risk is hypothermia, and hampered the search efforts. So fresh snow also likely buried any footprints or tracks. And ice made it even harder to travel in the area. And the high winds on some of the days grounded the helicopters. So you really had a lot of rangers waiting around at times for openings in the weather to fly and search. Excuse me. Another issue with this area was the rugged terrain. So the High Peaks wilderness is notorious for its rough mountainous terrain. Even though in the beginning I joked that, the peaks are only 4,000 feet, it's rugged.
Yeah, it's super.
It's a tough 4,000 feet. It's not
Absolutely.
It's not like rolling gentle hills.
So it's just so vast.
Yeah, I take back
I'm gonna rapid scroll up to the top. See, I warned you.
I know. I'm gonna take back my comment. I said it as a joke. I didn't mean it. I swear. And I apologize for pronouncing your part of the country wrong.
Just stepping in it.
I know.
It's all over.
It's my Dayquil brain today.
Yeah, I'm trying to. There's this one picture that just showed a bunch of peaks in the background. Keep going. I'll find it. But it just really was a great example of just how vast it is.
If you didn't know they were 4,000 feet, you would think they were taller.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, these mountains look, some of the pictures look like something you'd see in Colorado.
Yeah.
Like that one up. Oh, go back up. To your right. Down one. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that one, I'd be like, oh, that's Rocky Mountain National Park.
Yeah.
Like,
they're just aggressive.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not, there's nothing easy about them. So my comment, I take it back.
Yeah, you better.
I better. So the search zone around Avalanche Pass and Marcy Dam includes dense forests, steep slopes, cliffs, boulder fields, and frozen marshes. Navigating off-trail in this area is extremely difficult. Search teams often had to bushwhack through thick underbrush and over blowdown, which I guess I should have mentioned before is fallen trees, in below freezing temperatures. So the terrain could easily have hidden a body, and there are crevasses, deep snowdrifts, and thick evergreen cover. So this all greatly impacted the search. Another thing that really impacted the search was the lack of equipment. So Wesley had no camping gear, light or winter clothing. For searchers, this meant he likely would not be sheltering in an obvious spot like a tent or a lit fire, and could have been incapacitated quickly by the cold. And you don't think about it, with no gear, if like someone like Joe or I went out there with our 1,000 pounds of gear on our back, there might be a lot of stuff to find.
Yeah.
But if you're just going out there in the clothes on your back, like, that's even harder for searchers there's no evidence really that you were out there. So, a person without the proper gear might wander erratically due to hypothermia or attempt to find any refuge like under a log or in a hollow, which are very hard to spot. The fact that he shed his jacket, which is a sign of possible paradoxical undressing, hypothermia.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Indicated he was in distress. This made the mission essentially one of a search and probable recovery. And searchers had to consider that he might be lying hidden under the snow or foliage. So, obviously, scent and time loss was an issue. The canines really, never had a chance. They got out. They didn't get out there until 48 hours after he went missing. And by that time, there'd already been snowing and sleeting. So it's we've talked about, dog teams in the search for people, and it's pretty hard in good conditions. And now you're factoring in, this really inhospitable weather, wind and rain and snow, and it just compounds the difficulty for a canine unit to find the scent you're looking for. So, logistics and safety of the search were a big problem. So coordinating a large search in wilderness is logistically complex. We had multiple agencies involved, and they had to communicate and work in sync over vast areas. We talked a couple episodes ago about how they used to search, 100 years ago, and think of a large search like this, but without radios. I mean, it would have been impossible, basically. So
This person, I'm looking at his activity on all trails.
yeah,
He wrote afternoon hike, moving time 18 hours and 36 minutes. Total time 21 hours 56 minutes.
on this hike that
Yeah.
Wesley would have taken.
Yeah, it sounds like he didn't do nearly the whole thing, but
Yeah,
this person was doing, 33-minute miles.
that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
And I
that's-
mean, after seeing the terrain, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like it's flat ground.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. So, searchers faced hazards just like Wesley would have. Hypothermia, exhaustion, injury from the terrain. They had to be pulled out at times for rest and to avoid night hazards. The short daylight hours in this time of the year, the sun setting before 5 p.m., limited how long crews could safely grid search each day. So, all around, just tough searching. And so, getting into theories, I will cover kind of what people are saying, what law enforcement is saying. So, excuse me. Authorities treated this case as a missing hiker in the dangerous wilderness environment. They found no evidence of foul play during the search, so official efforts centered on the assumption that he got lost, injured, or succumbed to the elements. So the main theory that researchers, search and rescues personnel were talking about was accidental wilderness death, so exposure, hypothermia. So the primary theory is that Wesley died due to exposure or other natural hazards in the high peaks. He obviously set off alone with no supplies, food, or winter gear. Rangers and police tracked him into the backcountry between Marcy Dam and Lake Colden. A few days later, searchers, like we said, found his jacket lying in the middle of the trail toward Avalanche Pass. This obviously suggested he continued deeper into the rough terrain. Critically, the weather turned brutal in the days after he disappeared. Given these conditions, officials believe he likely succumbed to hypothermia or exposure overnight. In advanced stages of hypothermia, like I said earlier, and Joe's mentioned this lots of times, victims can paradoxically shed clothing, which the fact that his heavy jacket and belt were removed supports this scenario. Search teams found no shelter or fire that he might have used, implying he was unable to stave off the cold. And one of the regional magazines noted on this case, people die in these mountains. They drown in these rivers. Some of them disappear without a trace. Pretty brutal statement. So sadly, the leading theory appears to be that he passed away due to exposure. Another very, high probable theory is accidental fall or drowning, so it's obviously closely related to exposure. Investigators also considered that he might have suffered an injury, for example, a fall from a steep terrain into water, which would, speed up hypothermia. And, if he was hiking at night, that could have easily happened. Could have also fallen through a crevasse, could have fallen and then got under thick brush. So another is
There's
that
so many possibilities.
Yeah. Another is that he fell through the ice or into a stream or pond and his body sank or was carried out of the immediate search range. Such accidents have occurred before. Hikers have drowned or become wedged in terrain only to be discovered long after. Because only his jacket was found, officials had to consider that he himself might be hidden somewhere nearby, possibly in water under snow. So the search's failure to find him, despite dogs, helicopters, and dozens of rangers, reinforces the notion that he might have ended up in a spot difficult to detect. Importantly, no signs of a struggle or crime were observed, like I said. So the items recovered were intact and oddly tidy. His coat was found delicately placed like an offering by one account, which aligns more with the paradoxical undressing. One of the more less likely theories was foul play. Authorities did consider the possibility of foul play, but there was obviously no evidence of this, and he went into the woods alone. No one reported suspicious persons in the area, and nothing was found to suggest a struggle. Like Joe mentioned, the High Peaks Wilderness is remote. Encountering criminal activity there is very unlikely. And the state police have kept the case open as a missing persons investigation, so they don't think it was foul play. Some of the other theories, there were some paranormal theories that I didn't write down, kind of around the 411 stuff, so, Bigfoot. Yeah.
So that's off the deep end?
Off the deep end. Some people floated that he went out there and maybe committed suicide because he was like on a spiritual quest, but his family and friends said he wasn't in, like, when he left work, he wasn't in like a suicidal mindset. He was in kind of like almost like a spiritual quest. Like he was going out there to find himself, not.
I could see that 22-year-old, like, trying to figure life out. Maybe he just said, like, making a rash decision, not necessarily a suicidal one, just I want to get in touch with nature. I want to go, like you said, go find myself. I'm going to go do something hard, do something different, just change it up a bit, but going unprepared.
Like, I'm just going to go for like an hour.
Yeah.
I'm going to hike because he got done at work in like 2 p.m. It's light out till 5. He's probably like, you know what, before I go home, I'm just going to go for a quick walk in the woods,
And if it was rainy with how much brush, so that's a big thing too that I don't think we talk about a lot, is you don't have to get rained on to get wet. If you're going through thick brush where it's been raining,
it drips
and
down
it's dripping on you, you're wiping it on there, all of a sudden you can become pretty soaked, even though it's not rain. It could be sunny out. And if you're wearing the wrong clothes, it's the right temperature, like that's going to suck all the heat off of your body really quick.
He could have been it could have rained and there could have been large puddles on the trail, and he could have slipped and just fallen in a puddle and got soaked.
He
didn't have a car. He didn't own a car, so he walked everywhere. So think like if you or I were to go hiking there, we would have parked our car at the trailhead. Like, okay, you're 2 miles in, but maybe it's 5 miles from town. Like if we fell and got wet, we just walk back to the car, warm up. He doesn't have a car to go warm up on.
I am like 99.9% down the hypothermia paradoxical undressing route, or not necessarily completely undressing, but obviously I just keep going back. His coat was probably soaking wet, so he took it off.
Neatly placed it there.
Yeah,
which
like,
is interesting.
Well, maybe to dry out.
Yeah.
Like, so like if you're thinking about like you spread it out, like if it's wet, you're not going to keep wearing it. And he probably did the same thing with other articles of clothing and just unfortunately succumbed to the elements over time. It just sounded like it was a really treacherous few days following that.
Yeah.
And you just can't survive that without gear.
I wonder how far. So they found his belt. and his coat. And we're talking 10 degrees out that night, snowing. How far could someone walk?
I feel like pretty far.
Think so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it could go either way, but I feel like we've done enough of these cases where it seems like people get pretty far.
Yeah.
So that, I've heard crazier things. Like if you just have the will to keep moving and
Yeah. I mean, he was a young, fit guy.
yeah.
And if you're not in the right frame of mind, we've heard stories about
I've seen it.
like people feel warm.
I've told it a couple times,
Yeah.
probably earlier in the show, but when we were doing Long's Peak, I was with two guys and it started blizzarding, and we separated into groups of two because there were some people that were behind. So two guys went ahead, and I was waiting with another guy for someone that was. It became like whiteout, so we didn't want to keep moving and spread out because he was by himself. So two of us waited for the third guy to come up, and the other two went ahead, so we didn't have anyone alone. And as we were coming around a bend, the two guys who went ahead were walking back, and they had different clothes on. And they said they were wet, and they were going back to the car to change.
Yeah.
The car was like a day's hike away.
Yeah.
And you could tell like they were calm, and they were talking normally.
Yeah.
But the things they were saying were just insane.
Yeah.
So, and we were just like, no, we're not doing that. We're going back to camp. They're like, oh, okay. Like
They would have ended up on our show.
They would have tried walking back to the car in a blizzard. They took off all their wet clothes and put on their dry clothes, which then subsequently got wet.
Yeah.
So they were making a lot of really bad decisions because we were at altitude. It was cold. They were wet. They were like, I was fully witnessing it before my eyes. And like, we had to get them to camp. We set up tents. We got them warm.
Yeah.
And then they kind of started coming to and like realizing like, holy cow, like that would have been really bad.
Yeah. We cut a trip short one year on Mount Rainier. We were up probably 8,000 feet in sideways rain in like 35-degree weather. And I had planned for rain. So like I had rain gear. I had all my stuff in dry.
But who didn't?
No, everyone did. But the thing
okay.
was like, I had, stuff in dry sacks, and it was the wind. It was probably 40-mile-an-hour winds. We couldn't get a fire going.
It was just cutting into you.
Yeah. Setting up my tent, like it got completely soaked inside. Like I had no chance to even like keep it dry. And my rain gear, even though I had rain gear on, it was the wind and rain was coming out so heavy. Overheat. Oh, that's interesting.
All right.
I've never seen that notice before.
All right. Keep going.
Yeah. So like, even with my rain gear, I was getting soaked. Like it was soaking through the rain gear. So, I remember our group, like we all had maybe one, like as soon as I rolled my sleeping bag out, it was soaked. So like everyone in the group had one change of dry clothes left, and we kind of made the decision the next morning to head back down just because we expected the weather to continue to be like that in the coming days. And we're like, it's not worth,
Yeah. It would have been worth it.
Yeah. So like it's it can even when you're prepared, it can be, bad enough you got to turn around. And it's too bad he, went out there unprepared in these types of conditions. And this happened in 2010. It's, 15 years later and nothing has been found.
Yeah. I think it's just so remote.
Yeah.
So that's too bad.
But, someday someone might stumble across. The thing is, though, he probably, if he's taken his coat off, he probably wasn't staying on trail.
Yeah.
He probably maybe thought like, oh, if I go this way, I'll,
Or I don't think at that point you don't have. It's
you don't have logical thoughts.
Exactly. We always think about what would a reasonable person do?
Yeah.
And not that he's not reasonable. It's in that state you're not.
No
reasonable.
one is reasonable in that.
No
state.
one is reasonable.
That's why they call it paradoxical. It's like
it's just
doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I saw it, and the weirdest thing was when I saw it was they seemed completely with it.
Yeah,
the way they're acting, the way they were talking, but they were just doing stuff that was just like, this is the dumbest thing you could do in this situation. When they're just like, oh, we're just going, and they were so calm. They're like,
yeah,
we're going to the car because there's more clothes there.
When they warmed up and you like talked to them later about it, did they like, what was it like for them during that scenario?
It kind of dawned on them, and I think they kind of had that like, oh my God, like I could have
Did they kind of remember like what they were doing, or do you kind of like have amnesia?
They were confused.
They were confused.
A lot of confusion. They don't necessarily remember the whole thing. But it was more kind of like a realization of, oh, that could have been really bad. Yeah. And it was in that moment, you don't realize how, like, to me, it was like, no, we're just going to keep going. Like, it's fine. Like, they left their backpacks at the campsite. Like, they went to where we were setting up our camp, but they didn't have the tents. That was a bad decision. Like, we should have sent the tents with them so they could have set up. Or maybe it wasn't a bad decision. But they had left all their gear back, so they were walking back with nothing. They put on different clothes, and we're like, oh, we're just going to go back to the car.
And they were already soaked again.
And granted, it was day 2 of hiking to where we were going. And, like, they could have probably made it to the car, but, like...
Why risk it?
Well, it's not in that state.
You said a day hike, like
no, I mean,
gear.
going downhill is so much faster.
Still though, I mean,
it was late in the afternoon. It would have been dark before they got there, so it would have been a disaster. And there was just no rationale that made sense. But they were calm. That's the thing. It wasn't like you're dealing with someone who's crazy. It was someone who's completely calm. Seemed like they knew what they were doing. Like, so if you didn't know any better, you could be like, oh yeah, they know what's going on, and then they just wander off and potentially just. You couldn't even see the trail either. So
crazy.
So let us know what you think about the case. I'm pretty much thinking he got lost, unfortunately, to come to the elements. But let us know. And thanks again for tuning into our show. We appreciate all of you for listening and sharing locations unknown with your friends and family. Be sure to like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, where you can find the videos of each episode. Also, if you'd like to support the show monetarily, please visit our website and Facebook store to buy some sweet swag. You can also subscribe to our Patreon account, YouTube, Apple, and all the other places where you can get access to additional shows and soon a really cool streaming thing for paid customers. And lastly, when enjoying the beauty of nature, whether backpacking, camping, or simply taking a walk, always remember to leave no trace. Thanks, and we will see you all next time.